We are back for episode 32 of the Auld Triangle, and we've had a bit of breathing space lately in Irish mixed martial arts. It has been a hectic start to the year, and we love it, but not so much going on, but it gives us more time to get a little bit in depth. But still, there is big news on the horizon. There is big things happening in Irish MMA. Myself, Andy, and Caoilte, we're here. We're going to break all the latest and greatest news in Irish mixed martial arts. And yeah, if you like what you're hearing, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, give us an old follow on Spotify or SoundCloud or wherever you listen to your podcast. That helps us all very much in our growth. Tell a friend about the podcast. We really appreciate everybody's support, and thanks to everybody for listening in. And let's get straight into it. And the hot topic coming in mixed martial arts, in Irish mixed martial arts, is really Ian Garry's big win. He has broken into the UFC rankings. He's talked about it for years and years. We've seen him come up through Cage Warriors. We've seen him fight his way into that position to take on Daniel Rodrigues. He told us it was going to be easy. We didn't really quite believe him, let's be honest. We all thought it was going to be a tough test, but no one could have predicted except Ian Garry, what he went out there and did against Daniel Rodrigues. Predicted the head kick on with PT a couple of weeks back, went out and did the damn thing, and it was an absolutely tremendous performance. I mean, for me, looking at that performance is like, those are the ones that count for me. Okay, look, we were talking about, mistakes in the last fight. We were talking about growth as a fighter, but you go and you handle yourself the way you handled yourself against the toughest test. And whether Ian wants to think that way or not, that's up to him. But for me, and I know for probably you two lads as well, not to speak too much for you, that was his toughest test to date on paper. Daniel Rodrigues, a tough fella to get out of there, and he did it. He did it in really, really under 3 minutes. I mean, the tactics, the way he handled himself on fight week, I thought that this was one of the best weeks in Ian Garry's mixed martial arts career. Andy, what were your thoughts? Maybe we'll get into the nitty gritty of the fight a little bit as well, but your general thoughts on everything that happened on Ian Garry's fight week and the performance and everything like that.
Yeah, I think he absolutely nailed it. Like I know, as you said, Ian likes to kind of dismiss the threat that Daniel Rodrigues posed to him, but on paper, he was the toughest matchup. Like, make no mistake, this was the biggest test of Ian's career. Now, he passed it with flying colours, but like, Daniel Rodrigues has never been stopped like that. And Ian Garry just goes out and does it in 3 minutes like it's absolutely nothing. Clearly, the work that he's been putting in with the likes of Leon Edwards has been paying off. Kind of like the reverse of that. It was the left kick for Leon Mass with the punch. For Ian, it was the right straight masking the back leg, the right leg, and he, like, I know he finished it with the hands, but like the kick was sensational. It just showed that Ian Garry is one of the elite welterweights in the world. And when you go out and smoke someone, because that's what he did, he smoked Daniel Rodrigues, and then to call out a guy like Neil Magny afterwards, like, he means business. And I know I got confused.
We'll talk about what's next down the line, but maybe the moment of the fight as well. I'd like to bring Caoilte in for a minute. You cited the use of the kick, Andy, right? And Ian cited in an interview afterwards that he was sparring with Fabian Edwards as well over in Renegade, and it was actually Fabian that was throwing that exact shot to the body. And he explained it beautifully as well, Caoilte. When you're throwing that shot to the body, you're keeping control of the power arm of Daniel Rodrigues, or if you're throwing it on the other side, it would be the opposite, obviously. And obviously there was to set up the head kick, which came. But I mean, that's a level of fight IQ that you love to see, Caoilte, isn't it?
I absolutely love it. I was trying to find different examples to liken it to. If there's you see the highest level usually do where they'll throw a kick, let's say maybe a leg kick, and they'll throw it once, leave it for a while, start using their hands, mixing things up, throw it again, and get you thinking about that kick again. And he did that with the body, and then obviously you throw the killer kick. So in this case, Ian went to the body. He was thrown to the body. He had Daniel Rodrigues thinking about it, mixed things up, back to the hands, and then just as he was going to throw a kick, Rodrigues thinking about the body, hand goes down, clean, caught the kick to the head, and it was fantastic. And as you're saying, the fight IQ, to do that is incredible. I love to see it. The performance is just, it was perfect, really, when you think about it. And first man to finish, well, not to finish, to knock out Daniel Rodrigues. So another feather in his cap there.
Yeah, absolutely. Andy, something that also stuck out to me in the fight that maybe Ian might have been a small bit guilty of in other fights is not starting as quickly as maybe he should have in previous fights. But that wasn't a problem here. He came out of the gates flying, didn't he?
He did, but he also he did it very intelligently. Like he was making reads in the fight. He was dissecting. This is what champions do. When you get to the very highest level, they read their opponent. They see the openings that they're giving them. They start to learn their timings and how they're reacting. And Ian, as you mentioned, he put out a video describing how he set up the high kick, and it was that kick to the body that you were talking about that Fabian Evers had been drilling. And he's like, okay, I know how he reacts to that. So now I know, like, let him, forget about that body kick I just threw, but also have it still there subconsciously. So the next time I can smash him with the head kick. And that's exactly what he did. And it was, like, to be honest, it was flawless. Like I couldn't pick a single thing out of that performance to say Garry, has this or X, Y, and Z to improve. And not that I necessarily would anyway, but like it looked completely flawless to me. And it's just, it's so exciting. It really is so exciting.
It is really exciting. And I mean, like, I think it was just a flawless week for him. Like, I mean, I think he's kind of capturing the imagination of the American audience as well. I've seen the best reaction towards all of his interviews and everything like that. I mean, the Instagram stuff and the stuff with the pizza, I don't buy into that myself. It's not the content I'm too interested in, but I mean, it got a good reaction online, and that's what you're looking for. I mean, maybe I'm just showing that I'm a bit of an old bastard now with this.
Gets the people talking, Ian. It gets the people talking.
That's what it's all about. Like, I mean, yeah, if you either love it or you hate it, it doesn't matter, because do you know what really matters to me is what you go in there and you do inside the cage. And that was just, like you said, a flawless performance. He was on point. The head kick was one, but the follow-up shots and the killer instinct as well was just, I mean, it's brilliant to see. Like, that's the stuff that should get you excited when you're watching a guy like Ian Garry. And it was the same with Paul Hughes. I'm excited for Hughes to get his. We'll talk about what next for Irish fighters in general, but mainly for Ian Garry. Andy, you mentioned Neil Magny. Obviously Neil Magny has a fight coming up as well. Is that kind of a good call out for you? Is that what you should be aiming for next? I don't mind it whatsoever, but it does depend on Neil Magny getting a win.
I think it's a brilliant call out, because I think it shows that Ian wants the tough test. Like, Neil Magny's always been the guy that they've been throwing the fucking absolute killers to coming in. But usually it's not the killers calling him out. It's just, they're like, here's this guy that nobody wants to fight, like Hamzat or someone, like, let's call Neil Magny. He'll take the fight. Whereas this time it's the reverse for when someone's actually calling him out. So I think to me that just shows that Ian recognizes Magny as probably the gatekeeper in the top 10 of the division, and he is someone where that is a clear bar to again prove to everyone that I'm one of the fucking best in the world here, and I'm going to go out here after just knocking out Daniel Rodrigues, and I'm going to go out here and do the same thing to Neil Magny, and then do it again and again and again en route towards the championship. So it shows Ian's intent that he's not here to just pick and choose fights. He wants the fights that maybe others want, that aren't the sexy call outs of like Neil Magny's not this like massive personality. He's just a really good fighter who's been, not quite at championship level, but just below that for quite a long time. So I think it's I know it's logistically he's booked, but we'll see what happens. I think in the moment it was a good call out though. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like, Neil Magny's still a tough opponent as well. And I think Ian mentioned it's kind of the grappling test a little bit, and I don't think Neil Magny is going to want to stand and bang with Ian Garry, especially after seeing that against Daniel Rodrigues. And I think, Caoilte, it's safe to say that, Ian Garry has had, favorable matchups in opposed to, the level of opponents that he's faced have mainly wanted to stand and strike with them. And it'll be different with Neil Magny, won't it?
Completely. You're going in against a high level grappler in Neil Magny, who's been in there with the best of the division, best in the world, and he can mix it up every way he wants. We all know that he's so good on the ground, and he'll test Ian there. So this trip that Ian's going on to Brazil, if he really indulges in the engulfs himself in the jiu-jitsu side of things, he come back a different beast. And I think he said it himself. He thinks he can come back and submit Neil Magny. So we might see a whole different side of Ian if he does get that fight. And yeah, I think it was a perfect call out. Just depends on how all these different situations plan out. Like that, most of the division is booked up at the moment, for God's sake. So it's a tough one. But I think if Neil does get the win, it'll be a perfect fight for Ian.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a lot of talk about the 6-fight plan Ian had to get towards the title. I like the idea of it. How do you feel about that idea, and how do you kind of see that playing out, I guess?
It's an interesting one, because we were chatting about it in like the SevereMMA WhatsApp group, and I was kind of correcting Sean. I was like, oh no, like it's 6 fights from, you know, when he entered the UFC. That's what my assumption was, but then Ian clarified it. No, it's 6 fights including that one, so 5 more fights and then the title. I think it's, on one hand, I really like it because it kind of he shows Ian's like, I want to literally pick off every single one so that no stone is left unturned and there's no doubts in anyone's mind that I'm the best welterweight in the world. On the other hand, I don't think it's necessary. Like I think that Ian, and look, maybe he's looking at it from the perspective of there's still no rush, because he's, you know, he's taken a massive jump to Daniel Rodrigues from his previous opponent, and now it's only up from here. It's only, you know, elite level fighters. One thing that will make this maybe a little bit tricky is there's a lot of SevereMMA or Cliff FC fighters in the welterweight division. Like, you're looking at guys ahead of him. Vicente Luque is a training partner. Shavkat Rakhmanov's a training partner. Gilbert Burns is a training partner. Kamaru Usman occasionally trains down there. And then, you know, Ian's been spending some time at Team Renegade with UFC welterweight champion Leon Edwards. So I imagine maybe, I don't know if the invitation will be extended for much longer up to Renegade if he's going to start becoming a contender. But yeah, like maybe we see him fight a Magny and then into a Sean Brady or a Wonderboy. I would love to see him go into the Wonderboy as a main event in Dublin. It'll be interesting. Look, and I'm sure the division will change up over the next while, but
that's why I was kind of trying to
six fights.
Yeah, that's why I was trying. That's what I've been looking at it as well. Look at a lot of people up at the top of the division. They're getting on there. If we're talking about 6 fights or another 5 fights here, that's probably the cusp of maybe 2 years. You know, you're going to have your Usmans and your Covingtons and even Leon Edwards are going to be pushing on into their late 30s. Are they going to be in the welterweight division? You know what? You know, I can see Usman maybe moving up to middleweight eventually. You know, whatever happens with him, it'll be interesting to see. But I guess Israel Adesanya will have you say they're not going to fight each other either. So you never know. There can be a lot of moving. Go ahead.
Could you see Ian fighting down? Because obviously, you know, the more that Ian wins, he moves up the rankings, right? Could you see him fighting a lower ranked opponent?
Yeah, like, I mean, just fight the competition around you. Like, I'm looking at a Michael Chiesa as well. If Neil Magny doesn't get the win, I don't think, you know, if he doesn't get the win, you're looking at someone like Michael Chiesa. I'm looking at the likes of maybe Sean Brady or Jeff Neal or Stephen Thompson as well. And I mean, this whole thing about gyms not fighting teammates, well, fucking guess what? When you get to the top of the division, it's a dog-eat-dog world. And I mean, there might be no choice in the matter. If 2 guys want the same thing, there's only one way to kind of sort that
Somehow
out.
I think Ian might be able to be convinced. As a guy who likes to prove himself, I think he might be.
Like, I mean, I'm watering at the mouth at the prospect of Ian Garry and Shavkat Rakhmonov fighting in about 2 to 3 years. Like, Christ,
like, is Hamzat staying 170? Because if he's staying 170, like, could you imagine?
I think Hamzat will try and if they're going to match him up with Usman, right? I think Hamzat will probably fight Usman, then maybe fight for the title. But like, when you miss weight by that much, that only means one thing. You're only kind of going to be a bit par player at welterweight. I more envision Hamzat Chimaev as a middleweight more so than anything. And if we're getting to that territory for Ian, let's think about it. We'll have maybe likelihood of Ian fighting on the Boston card in August this year. Will he fight again? Maybe he might fight if Conor is going again in November. So it'll be interesting. That would be around a time when you're going to be wanting to fight in competition around you. You know what I mean? Whereas I think that Stephen Wonderboy Thompson fight is absolutely perfect. Now he's taken on Michel Pereira, and that's happening in July. And, Stephen Thompson isn't fighting all that regularly now either. So if Stephen Thompson got a win against Bahia, and right now, based off his past couple of performances, I could see him doing that. A more technical striker than Bahia. So he could put himself into a position to headline a fight night event in Dublin early next year. And I think it'll be interesting to see what happens, whether Ian will choose to fight in August on that Boston card, whether he will choose maybe to fight a little bit later on in the year. Conor came out today and said that the Mike Chandler fight is going to be announced throughout the episode of The Ultimate Fighter, which is airing at the end of the month as well. So the thing about it is that you can't really say, or we can just speculate, because there's so many moving parts here, Caoilte, that anything could happen.
I'm very disappointed no one's mentioned Kevin Holland. Like, I'm gonna upset you a little bit here. Like, I know you don't like the pre-fight antics, all this, but I love it, to be honest with you. I love all the random shit that happens before fights.
Tell him, Caoilte.
But like, could you imagine Kevin Holland and Ian Garry just barking at each other like from across a room, or doing some match? I think it'd be hilarious. It'd be just such good fun, and it'd build a bit of buzz, because Kevin Holland would bite as well. Like, Ian would do all his usual antics, and Kevin would bite and even go one further as well. And it'd be just a game of cat and mouse between the two of them until they finally get in and thump the heads off each other, really. But
there'd be some more shit talk in the cage then once
it's even better.
Yeah, and I think like Andy mentioned about fighting down, and let's be real, that's Ian Garry who would be fighting down against Kevin Holland, even though Holland has been in there with some of the bigger guys as well. But in terms of rankings, at least, I'd love to see it. It'd be a very exciting fight. But there's one guy that we haven't mentioned yet, and I mentioned Shavkat Rakhmonov over the course of maybe the next 3 or 4 years. I'm looking at a guy like Jack Della Maddalena, who's ranked number 14 right now. And I mean, a lot of people don't like the prospects versus prospects, but I love those fights. Let's fucking see who is the best prospect there. You have like that. Jack Della Maddalena has been like lighting the world up, and like, I mean, I think Jack, if he gets another win and Ian gets another win, we could see that fight happening. I mean, there's some pretty exciting fights there for Ian Garry. Like, we're on the journey now. We're well and truly on the journey, and like, we're getting into the business end of things. It's really, really exciting
It's like every single fight that we're talking about here. It's like, that's really like, it's all so exciting. Like, it's an amazing time again in Irish MMA to find, like, I don't know, I'm beaming here. Like,
it's unreal.
Any one of these fights.
And the thing about it is that, us as Irish fans and Irish mixed martial arts fans, we haven't had someone break in. Think about it with Conor. Conor didn't break into the rankings. Well, it must have been 2014 to 2015 maybe when he broke into the rankings. And I think Andy's after freezing up there a little bit.
Just about to say, yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking that he was looking a bit too excited about Ian Garry. You kind of froze there with your eyes closed, and you were wondering, was Andy getting a little bit too excited there about Ian Garry fights?
I had a stroke.
But like, you think about the last time we've had someone enter into the rankings where we've had a lot of unknowns, and I think the fun part about Ian Garry's journey is that we have these unknowns. Like, we'll discuss about the unknowns ahead of the Daniel Rodrigues fight, and now we have the unknowns coming in against because you're not going to get any easy opposition now from here on out. Ian might prove us wrong time and time again and go in and make light work of these guys, but there's no doubt every test now for Ian, if he's moving up the rankings, is going to get more difficult and more difficult. And, it's a fantastic time, like you said, for Irish mixed martial arts, Andy.
But that's the way it's trending as well. Like, it's not like, look, Ian's probably right in one sense about the D-Rod matchup, where like D-Rod's not like one of the championship caliber fighters in the welterweight division, but it is ranked. So had he gone out there and like eked a decision over him, you might be like, okay, it's still very unclear as to what Ian's ceiling is. But when you put on that performance, then it's like, nope, we can be as excited as we want to be, because everything is trending in the right direction for Ian's potential and his the realistic expectations of him reaching that potential and fulfilling that destiny, or whatever you want to call it. And that's the reason for such excitement for Ian, for those, his team, for us covering it, and for anyone watching it. And also what we haven't talked about yet, for other fighters in Irish MMA, who Ian is now starting to extend that olive branch. He's putting the hand down and saying, come on up the ladder, because we've got to heap more fighters in other organizations who are champions and are chomping at the bit to get in there.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a great segue, Andy. And look at Caoilte, I'll throw this question to you. Out of the current crop of Irish fighters outside of the UFC right now, in your opinion, who do you think is the favourite to get signed up first or next to the UFC?
Rhys McGee first, personally. He's got the experience there. He's got the contact in already. He's creating his own hype online. Brian Battle's even accepted. They even had that little bit of, if Brian Battle wins the fight, he gets the Cage Warriors belt. Rhys McGee wins the fight, he gets the Tough Trophy. So I think I could get behind that fight. And to be honest, I don't know what the Irish have done to Brian Battle at all, because he wanted Ian Garry and now he wants Rhys McGee. He's going after all the Irish. But no, that'd be my pick for the most likely to be next to go in, especially since he's had a bit of experience in there before.
I would tend to agree with that as well. Rhys would definitely be up there as number one. As Paul Hughes as well, for me, to be honest. Paul and Rhys would be up there, and I think both of those guys should be added onto the Boston card later on this year. I think it's an absolute no-brainer from me. Like Andy, with Rhys, it's great to see him kind of going out there and being a little bit outspoken. Look, Rhys is a quite confident fella, doesn't kind of speak too much, but in modern day mixed martial arts or combat sports and the growth of social media there as well, that's what you have to do, and he's doing it, and he's doing a good job of it as well as Rhys. And I seen Paul Hughes even come out today as well and do the same thing, give that battle cry for Boston, and that's what these guys have to be. They have to show that they're wanted. And put their names out there. It's great to see, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw Paul overdoing a bit of work with Killcliff at the moment. Henry Hooft posted something the other day, tagging the UFC, being like, look, this is the next guy. So we're in it's not often we're in this position in Irish MMA where, like, usually there'll be the kind of a clear standard. Like, so when you asked Caoilte that question just there, I was like, oh well, who is the standard? Because we have 3 Cage Warriors champions, and usually that's the ticket. Of course, there's also Danny McCormick as well, an Invicta FC champion. It's a really, really exciting time. But yeah, I think that the lads are. There's not. Look, you can only do so much to call for your shot. I think what Rhys is doing right now, calling for an opponent, the fact that he's bit and he's going for it too. There's a lot of people calling for that fight. You see the kind of the numbers that some of the social media posts are doing, and it's very, very positive. But I do think it helps also that Ian is also mentioning these guys. Like, Ian is the one that's there. He's the one that has the shine at the moment. So for him to say, look, let's get an Irish card going. Let's get Irish people. Let's get Irish fighters in there. 3 champions. Come on, UFC, let's do it. That does help too. So whether it's Rhys, whether it's Paul, whether it's Caolan or whoever it is, or a combination, I would really hope to see at least one maybe get signed for that Boston card, with a couple more on the way in the coming months.
Yeah, as would I. And I mean, look, we didn't mention Caolan Loughran by name. Obviously, Andy mentioned the 3 Cage Warriors. No problem with Caolan getting himself out there online and chatting shit and stuff, and that's great. That's exactly what you need. But Rhys and definitely Caolan, and with Paul as well, a couple of his early fights. What the UFC are looking for, based off conversations I've been having with a couple of fighters, and you too, Andy, and I'm sure you too as well, Caoilte, what the UFC are looking for now are undefeated finishers, and not everybody fits into that bill, on the Irish MMA scene. And I just wish it wasn't that way, because it doesn't have to be. It never was, but that seems to be the new business model of the UFC, Andy, isn't it? And that's what they're kind of looking for right now. So I would hope that doesn't hinder some of the Irish fighters' path into the UFC, because fucking hell, it's hard enough winning fights on their own, rather than putting the extra added pressure to remain undefeated and to go out there and looking for finishes at the same time too. I think if you're good enough, you're good enough. Look at Paul Hughes, went out there and destroyed Vucenic in his last fight. Tell me that's not UFC worthy. He didn't get the finish, but Jesus Christ.
That whole the undefeated and finishes thing is just a load of bullshit. Like, to be honest,
Nonsense
like
to me.
it's ridiculous. It's everything that MMA is supposed to stand against. It's what Dana White loves to rally or against boxing, that it's, you know, it's a broken sport and all this. And part of that is because you just have people fighting shitebags, for lack of a better term, on their way up, fighting bin men and getting a 10-0, 20-0, 30-0 record, and they finished everyone, but they haven't really fought anyone. And in MMA, it's not like that. You've got, like, look at a guy like Reece McKee, where he came up short. He got smoked by Khamzat Chimaev. But look what he's done since then. Look what he's done since he left the UFC, and he's fighting guys and he's taking tough tests and he's beating them and he's finishing them. So what does it matter that he's not undefeated? These things are stupid. Again, as you mentioned, Paul Hughes, the caliber of opponent that he's fought on the regional scene, in guys like Morgan Charrier and Jordan Vucenic, it's just so much higher than a lot of other fighters. So yeah, he may not be finishing lately, but like, have you seen his head kick KO in his Cage Warriors debut? Have you seen the other finishes that he's had? Like, he is a finisher. It's just he's fighting really tough opponents right now, and like, I mean, look at Jordan Vucenic. No disrespect, I have all the respect in the world for Jordan Vucenic, but look at him. He should also be in
the UFC. He should also be there. He's as good.
But look at the state that Paul left him in that fight. That went to a decision. I forgot for about 2 months that was a decision. I genuinely thought Paul finished him because of the way he left him in. Jordan Vucenic is a fantastic fighter, but like, tell me that's, like, you know, a quick finish is better than an absolute destruction like that over a high caliber opponent.
Do you think, Caoilte, it's a little bit of a worry now, maybe for Irish MMA fans, with this kind, like, because seems to be the new kind of business model or structure that UFC are kind of looking to try and create? You know, we have avenues like Dana White's Contender Series and stuff like that to get in there, but, you know, I'm looking at guys like Reece and Paul and anyone, like, I mean, I think any of the current crop, Danny, Sean, Kiefer, any of those guys and women are going to get in there 5 years ago into the UFC, straight in, based off performances that they have. But it just seems that there seems to be a little bit of a newer structure in the UFC right now.
Completely. You look at even the number of events they're doing, the amount of fighters they're signing, a lot, like, they're not even signing a lot of quality fighters nowadays. You've seen some, I can't remember the name of the guy, the heavyweight, a few weeks back they signed, and it was probably one of the worst fights or performances I've seen.
He had fucking 1 month of mixed martial arts training before he took that fight. I can't even remember his name now, which tells its own story, but it was absolutely dreadful. You're correct. Like, and that frustrates me when I see some standard of fighters. You
see he's undefeated finisher though, man.
Yeah, like, it's all like, it's
probably really wasn't.
I wouldn't be surprised. You see all this, and then high quality fighters not getting signed. It's frustrating, especially when there's such a massive market there to be tapped into if they start signing these and bring them over to Ireland. And if you look at the other side of it, the UK fighters currently signed, they've got an abundance of them. They can't put them all on a London card every year. So sign up the Irish crop, bring it over to Dublin, and then fill the rest of the card with the lads who can't get on the London card. It just makes complete sense. And it's frustrating. And I imagine the fighters are even more frustrated.
So much fun. I'm admittedly, I'm not a huge boxing fan at all, but I have been. MMA has been like, oh, what's that? That's over in the distance here this week, because I've been swept up in this Katie Taylor fight week, where I'm like I hadn't a clue who Gary Cully or Paddy Donovan or these guys are. Like, before, I'm like, oh geez, I'm gonna watch that. You know, I'm gonna watch these guys fight here at the weekend, because this week feels special, and like, we can have that again. We had that in 2014. We can have that again in Ireland. Like, there's fucking fighters there. Let's do it.
It's a great comparison, Andy, that you said it, you know, because what Katie is doing for some of those young and up and coming boxers is the exact same as what Conor did for some of the young and up and coming fighters when he was on the rise as well. And I feel that, you know, Ian Garry is in a position now, along with the likes of Reece and Paul as well, that can really lead that charge, if you want to call it the second wave, if you want to call it the fucking third wave, whatever you want to call it. But what's there is what's there now, and we're in a state where we probably have the most talent rich level fighters that are coming through in Ireland, and that's due to the progression of mixed martial arts and guys like Conor and Cottle and Paddy Houlihan and Owen Roddy and all Aisling Daly and everyone who's kind of forged the path for all of these fighters as well. But it's a great time, lads, to have an Irish MMA based podcast, isn't it? Brilliant.
Great time for it, isn't it?
It surely is. It surely is. And it was also a great time for Johnny Walker last Saturday night, who after Ian Garry went out there and took home a decision win over Anthony Smith. Caoilte, break down the fight for me in your opinion. You know, a good performance by Johnny, but you might be a little bit disappointed, which is fair, I have to say, that he didn't go out there and get the finish in round 3 when it was kind of there for the taking.
Yeah, it was I feel like the story of the fight was Johnny Walker was pretty much, he seemed in cruise control from a lot of it, and it seemed like the finish was there for the taking almost in the final round. The way he chopped those legs and the way he worked it from the off, and the way the accumulation of that damage was so evident in the final round that, like, Anthony Smith could barely stand on it. It looked so painful. And that was kind of it's more the story of the fight. Those leg kicks were just so impactful, and Johnny Walker was incredible. I thought he was, like, you can be disappointed at the finish. I'm a little bit disappointed to get the leg kick finish. I thought it would have been a nice way to top off the fight and the performance. But at the same time, I'm not mad at it, because even at that, if you're going in for a leg kick, and you leave yourself open at any point, Anthony Smith's a very dangerous fighter. All it takes is one punch, especially with the big boys. So he got berated over it as well for not finishing the fight. But either way, I feel it was a really good performance from him. He seems to be leveling up with every single fight, and his style has changed dramatically over the last while, and it's now being honed in, and he seemed to have found this new groove that works really well and could bring him very much to the top. Really, if you look at that division, you could see him competing up there. But anyway, I'm rambling. That was.
I feel like he should get a bit of slack as well. Like, I mean, he's coming off back-to-back first round finishes as well. Like, okay, you went to decision this time, but like, come on, like, it's not like he's putting on a dud every time or anything like that at all.
Johnny Walker's story kind of has been, for me, is that there's this Jekyll and Hyde character that has been coming out for him in his style of fighting, where he has a certain level of mad bastardry in fights, and he can start off, you know, fairly composed and in control, but then when he gets caught in a wild exchange, he turns into this wild man. And that has happened in fights previously. And the Ryan Spann fight, to me, where he won that fight twice and then lost it 3 times, really, in that fight, ended up getting knocked out by Ryan Spann, just because he was a little bit too wild and a little bit too eager for the finish. You know, what I look at in his latest performance against Anthony Smith as a guy that has improved and learned from those mistakes, right? And think of it as a guy who's, you know, not the finished article yet, after moving with John and has been working with John for the last couple of years. And what the balance needs to be now is, look, you don't want to get rid of those wild exchanges or that mad bastardry, really. You need to just cull it down a little bit and then section it off for different parts of the fight. And I think that he did that quite well against Anthony Smith. Went out there with a structured game plan, obviously to attack the leg. Went out there and, like Caoilte said, never really looked in trouble for the fight as well. And we're talking about a guy who's coming in here and facing off against top 5 level opponents in the UFC. So that's not easy to do. Yes, okay, the critics will say that finish could have came in round 3, but I am choosing to look more at the positives here. I'm choosing to look more as a fighter who's still building and finding himself a little bit. And now he's got to make it happen sooner rather than later, because, you know, we're coming into the likes of the Blachowicz and the Ankalaevs. I know he went out and he got face to face with Jamal Hill, you know, so there could very well be a title shot coming his way next, you know. So go ahead.
How about that Poatan call out?
Yeah, great call out, but he's been matched up with Jan Blachowicz now. So
sorry, I mean, you're right.
Yeah, well, I like that. I liked. Oh man, when I saw it, it was like I was thinking after the fight, Jesus, that'd be a great fight to welcome Pereira in. But I mean, yeah, Jesus, I'd be very interested to see what kind of a game plan that John would come in against someone like Poclit, because Jesus, he's one of the most scariest fighters in the UFC right now. But look, he's going in there with Jan Blachowicz in maybe a month or two. I can't remember. That was maybe announced for 290 or 291 or something like that. Maybe that's the next fight for Johnny Walker, is the winner of that fight.
I think he's officially Irish now also, right? He's married an Irish woman.
100%. That's what we were talking about.
I think be time for Johnny Walker, for Shawnee Schuler to come on the Auld Triangle. I think,
It
you know,
might be.
he's been in Ireland long enough. I think he fits the criteria. We'll get in contact with our people. We'll have our people contact his people, and who knows what could happen in the future.
Let's make it happen. We're going international. We're going international here on the Auld Triangle. Moving on, lads. Asael Adjoudj picked up another great win against George Sasu by decision at Bellator Paris. Oh, I don't know about you guys. I'm not going to miss this opportunity to have a little bit of a rant here about trying to watch this Bellator event. It was absolutely fucking nightmare trying to watch this event. My God. I sent a video to the group of what my experience was. I had to go back and I watched Asael's fight. He did a great job. We'll talk about that in a minute. But like when you're
you need to start paying your internet bills, Ian.
I paid $20. Like they wanted $20 to watch this event that was freezing every 2 minutes that I couldn't find. I was like, I said it in the Twitter group. It was like I would have solved the Da Vinci Code quicker than I would have found a stream for the Bellator Paris event, and they really need to get that figured out, because as a guy who covers Irish mixed martial arts, and with Bellator as a promotion that have a lot of Irish talent on the card, I need to be seeing those fights, and you need to make it easy for me to watch those fights as well. And they just simply haven't done it for me. And even not for you lads. I know it's kind of all over the place on Virgin Media back home, but what was your lads' viewing experience?
Canada was our former safe haven. We used to go and stay in Ian's for a night to watch Bellator.
It was brilliant when it was on YouTube. It was so easy. It was just like bang on for me. And then I was like sending the lads all the Canadian links as well. Just get on there, lads, use your VPN. It was perfect. But like even with a VPN this time,
I went to Mexico for this one or something.
I went to Mexico for the prelims, and then forget about it for the main card. It was a nightmare. I went back and watched a couple of fights, but look at Asael got out there and got another good win. He on quite a good win streak right now. Were you guys impressed by his performance, Andy or Caoilte, whichever one wants to jump in here?
You go for first, Caoilte.
Yeah, I was impressed. Obviously he's more so renowned as obviously he's a high level striker. You can speak for days about how good he's at striking, but I thought he showed some really nice grappling. His takedowns were good. He was active on top when he managed to get Sasu down to the ground, land some lovely elbows. That really impressed me from this fight. I thought it was a very mature performance. He was hunting submissions. And it's one of those, it was one of those that he potentially could have got a finish at one point, but those rounds are so valuable. And I get really excited about him because he looks like such a problem for that division, and his ceiling is like, can't see what his ceiling is. He could end up being in that, or he could be ranked. He could end up fighting for a title at some point. He could really be a star for both in Ireland and in France, to be honest with you, especially after that performance.
It wasn't entirely perfect, Andy, though, wasn't it? There was a couple of little things at the end of round 3 where he kind of got caught on bottom and accepted position. But look, we have to remember, 6 or 7-1 right now. And he's kind of showing and I think maybe that's, I spoke with him a little bit before it was the last Dublin fight. And he kind of wanted to show his well-roundedness a lot more, obviously known as a really good striker. But I think, he's been doing that. He did it in the fight in Dublin. He did it here against George Sasu, and, kind of making a point to show that he's not just a striker in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think, I had him up the first 2 rounds. I thought he lost the last round. And there's flashes of, or not just flashes, there's a lot of brilliance in there when it comes to the striking, and some of the body kicks he was landing were thunderous. And I think that when you're 2 rounds up, you kind of, in some fights you can afford to test out your grappling. In some fights you can't, because you might get finished. But I thought, I never felt that he was in real danger here, but I did think he lost the 3rd round. And I think as you said, it just shows he was 5-1 coming in here. He's 6-1 now. He definitely has a bright future. He's being hailed as kind of like the next big thing coming out of SBG, but there's still room for improvement there, and that's not a criticism. That's just that's natural. And I think that, look, just keep on matching him with slow incremental progressions here. And he does, there's brilliance there. So look, let's just see how he gets on the next little while. But he's an incredible fighter to watch. And at the end of the day, he lost a round, but he won the fight. And I don't think he ever really looked in too much danger here. So it's the overwhelming majority is positives to take out of this performance from Asael.
Still only
Oh, yeah.
24 as well. Like he's got
Yeah.
years.
Like,
He's not even close
how
to
many
his prime
how
yet,
many
like.
fighters have we seen where they're strikers and like they get to a certain point and then it's like, oh, they actually have no grappling whatsoever. He's not, like, he's clearly putting the time and effort into to not be one of those fighters.
And that's what you need to do, man. If you want to get to the very top, you got to put yourself in those kind of situations. And he's building himself a nice little good tests along the way as well. I mean, like, he's not fighting any scrubs here either. And we've been critical of the matchmaking of Bellator time and time again, but I think they've handled the Adjoudj pretty well so far. And be interesting to see what's next. Like, do we give him a name next? Do we give him another kind of, I'm sure he'll probably want to fight on that card again in September. Like, what would you like to see next for Amandi?
See, this is just, again, I'm not trying to crap on Bellator, and I struggle oftentimes to, when we talk about who's next, is like, I don't really know, because it changes. Like, I don't think you put him in against like a
yeah, do you want to see maybe a ranked guy or a ranked guy?
No, I don't think. No, I don't think we need to see that next. Like, I would say like something like I don't know, stylistically you might not want this one, but like is it Kasan Magomedov? Not him next, but maybe like the in between. Who he's been fighting now, and someone like a prospect like him. Give him an in between guy. I don't really have a name. Is the problem. I don't know if like. Someone like a Keir Harvey, I think he was fighting recently. Was he on the same card? Maybe someone like him, or I think he lost actually. Maybe the guy that beat him, you could stick them against each other or something like that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I like. I guess that maybe I should have worded the question a bit better. Like, I don't think it's time for a ranked opponent for him yet, but kind of you want that step up as well. And
in fact, I'll go with that one that I just said. Fabakary Diatta. He's 9-1 now. Asael 6-1. He just beat Keir Harvey in a decision. Keir Harvey, decent fighter, fighting out of the lads over in Scotland. Do him.
There you go.
Dublin.
Samuel, Andy is after sorting it out there, fam. Let's get it happening.
Really intricate matchmaking
Caoilte, Luca Poclit picked up a really good decision win over Oliver Enkamp. That Oliver Enkamp is no joke, and Luca took home the decision, and rightfully so in this fight.
Bit of a controversial one, that, with the decision, wasn't it? Well, people thought as much. I admittedly was not paying full attention to be scoring it and giving my opinion on what I thought of the decision. But I remember afterwards I was scrolling around and I was thinking, geez, people are kicking up a right out fuss here. I was like, but no, it's good win. Going up against two high level grapplers up against each other, you're in for a good fight. From what I saw, it was grand. It wasn't blowing me away too much, but no, I enjoyed it. I need to go back and watch it fully to give a full opinion on it, though, to be honest.
Yeah, I didn't watch I didn't like kind of score it along the way. Like, I mean, a lot of the exchange. I didn't see too much of that controversy. A lot of people thought that Enkamp should have got the win, or what were you seeing, Caoilte?
I was just scrolling. I remember after the decision, I was just doing your typical scroll around on Twitter, and I seen people saying they thought Enkamp won, and now, as I said, I'm not really in a position to be like saying, oh, that definitely should have been the case. But no, I thought it was an interesting point of view, and the judges clearly didn't agree with that. But saw a little bit online about it. Don't read much into it. MMA fans have some mad opinions at times. We all know that.
You see some mad shit here.
Like, Ben Carter shot at 29-28, Eric Cologne 30-27, and Brian Weiner 29-20. Like, unanimous decision. You had one judge giving all 3 rounds. A lot of top position, a grinding affair, and
Yeah, like, I mean, I was actually surprised when you said that. Look at it, and people will have their own opinions too, but like, from what I seen looking at it, he looked fairly in control. And I mean, you're going to definitely trust the judgment of a judge like Ben Cartledge as well. However, about the 30-27, I mean, that just kind of, maybe you had one swing round there, but a good win nonetheless for Luca, who kind of got that lucinator in Dublin, picked up another good win against a solid opponent here. Now he's going to be he's a guy to kind of keep an eye on, that's kind of emerging through the ranks in Bellator, isn't he, Andy?
Yeah, like, Oliver Enkamp is he's a very well-rounded fighter. He's got some highlight reel. He's had a lot of kind of great finishes. I think a win over him is solid. I don't think it's outside the realms of possibility that Luca could be like fighting towards the rankings at this point. You know what I mean? Like, I think he's a guy you could kind of stick him in there with someone, see what he's made of. Yeah, I mean, looking like at number 10 there in the welterweight ranking, Sabah Hamasi, like, you know, it's probably a step up, but I mean, Oliver Enkamp is probably thereabouts towards like a ranked fighter.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Like, I think Oliver Enkamp is a name, and maybe like you're looking at maybe someone like we talked about, Asael, maybe taking on someone like that who's maybe not ranked but has a name as well. But that was a good win for Luca. Nicolas Soli, unfortunately, that fight got cancelled. What was the reason? I think his opponent failed to make weight, Andy.
So, yeah, his opponent missed weight by like a few pounds, and then they decided not to take the fight. So I think Soli was advised by his coaches and his teammates that no, don't take it. So
he missed by 2 kg or something.
Yeah, it was he missed by a decent chunk. I can't remember the specifics now, but I remember at the time it was a decent chunk that he missed. All right.
Yeah, normally, like when you're getting advice to not take the fight, it's it's probably because of that big weight cut miss, and probably the right decision to make too. If a guy hasn't, obviously, I don't know, you can maybe cite an injury, but you know what, some guys just don't want to cut the weight to try and get that advantage too if they can get away with it, and you know, those are tough decisions to make. You prepare, you get yourself ready, and then the fight falls through at the last minute. It's a difficult one, but ultimately the right decision, and hopefully Sully will get matched up on it. Look at, I mean, he went and he made way, he did his job, so like, why not throw him
for it too?
Yeah, well, I would imagine Bellator would definitely pay him now, and hopefully they did. But yeah, I would like to see him maybe, keep him going, keep him on it, maybe put him on an American card or another card ahead of the September Dublin show. I'm sure he'd like to fight before then as well. Stephen Costello was over in the States. United Fighters League, which is a brand new organization, ran out of Tennessee, isn't it? Nashville, Tennessee. Rampage Jackson, Frank Mir has involvement. Looks like a pretty neat setup over there. But Stephen Costello went over to take on Ashley Reese and lost, unluckily, by a split decision, guys. You know, we were looking at it. I'm of the opinion I scored round 1 and round 2, a very, 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 very close round 2 to Stephen Costello. I thought he was unlucky not to come away here with the split decision or unanimous decision or any kind. I mean, he lost the split decision to Ashley Reese. What's your thoughts on the fight, Caoilte?
As you said, round 2 is the toss-up. I think he won the first round fairly clean, lost the third, and it's just that middle round. It's a shame, because if he was to get the nod in that fight, that would have launched him into next round of the tournament, but kind of really gives him a bit of momentum as well. Not a bad performance to go in there and put it up to Ashley Reese, who's been in there with some very, very high level guys, lots of experience, and to put on a performance like that against a guy like him is it's impressive, and it's fair play to Stephen Costello. 4 fights into your career, you don't see many lads doing that.
A very good point there. I mean, traveling over there, taking on a guy that had quite a bit more experience than him in Ashley Reese, and he really put it up to him, Andy, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I scored the first round to him. I scored the third round to Reese, and then the second round was really, really close, because I thought that like the first round, I thought he looked great on the feet. He was getting his jab off. He was getting like some nice kicks to the body, up the middle. He got him into like a kind of a crucifix. It was like Reese would have gone for a takedown, and then Stephen managed to get himself into like a crucifix position almost, and he started landing some shots from there. I thought he looked good. I know Frank Mir was saying he was looking real tired coming into the second, and there was kind of conversation about him, going or sitting down before the stool even came or something like that. But I thought that he started really strongly in the second round, and I had him winning. I still don't know. I think you could swing it for Reese based on the last kind of 30 seconds of the fight, where he landed a couple of flush knees after he'd gotten the takedown. They got him back up to end the round. He landed some nice knees, but geez, it's a toss-up. Like, I could definitely see an argument for Stephen winning that fight, a very, very close one. And then I thought that Reese did a great job of kind of getting him down and wearing on him and landing some damage in the third. But the two lads were out on their feet by the end of it. They looked absolutely exhausted. So it was a hard fought fight. Costello bloodied him up in the first, yeah, it's a rough one. But as you said, look, Stephen Costello's previous opponents were, you know, debuting pros, a 2-1 and 0-1, and then to win and facing a guy who's 10 fights into his career, that's a big step up. So I think he gave a great account of himself there. And there's definitely some improvements. I thought some of his shots were looking quite nice, but yeah, look, I guess a win or learn loss there for Stephen Costello.
Absolutely, yeah. You can take lots of positives. Obviously, he will be disappointed not to get the decision, but you know, you're going in there up in your level in competition and being competitive. I really liked, and I don't know whether this was by choice or by force, but you know, it was a grueling fight. But I thought Stephen, like, he kind of lulled Ashley Reese into a nice slow pace, which I think benefited Stephen quite a bit, where he was getting off some lovely straight shots, very impactful straight shots. And the shots that he got off at the start of the second round and even midway through the second round, for me personally, were enough. But like you said, Andy, the takedown towards the end of the round and some of that damage that got off, that's where you're getting your split decision. And you know, you can think one way, you can think the other, and I don't think you can argue over the split decision. Just unlucky for Stephen, but he'll take a lot of lessons from that fight. He'll bring him back in, and you know, I'd like to see him fight on home soil if it could make it work. You know, it'd be good for him. Maybe try get on a local show, maybe try get on another Bellator card coming up. It'd be nice. I don't know whether he signed a multi-fight contract with these boys or not. Or
posted up afterwards that he's gonna that he's looking forward to competing on the next card on August 12th in Arizona. So that looks like he's sticking around with them for a while. Gets the opportunity to travel to the States, which is decent.
Yeah, good for him. And that promotion offers some quite good stuff, like health insurance, and they really kind of look after the fighters, Andy, don't they?
Yeah, I believe so. Like, again, someone was saying online to me, he's like, "Oh, you need to go look into this." I was like, "Oh, I just haven't." But yeah, I believe they're saying that they're giving healthcare and all sorts of stuff, which is obviously good. If that's the case, then that's brilliant. But you know, it's tough as well. Like, we're talking about the experience of going in against someone against Ashley Reese, but also even just traveling over to like Memphis, Tennessee, like, you know, going through that experience to fight. Like, obviously you can go off on holidays, that's grand, but like when you're going over and dealing with the travel and you know, training in it and staying in an area where you're not familiar with, and you know, that's a good experience for later on. And like, I know, I think his close friend Peter Finn, the kind of the TV builder, was there in his corner, but like I didn't see John Kavanagh or Dave Roach or anyone, so you know, kind of going in there without coach as well, that's probably something, you know, to overcome as well. So all a big learning experience for Stephen.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and we shall move on. Jamie Abbott Bissett, Senan Kokri, both fighting at UK FC. They did fought last weekend. We're recording this before that fight happened, so we'll cover it on the next podcast. So stick with us for that. Let's move on to our interview, lads, will we? Let's bring in Jordan Furey, who's set to make his professional debut, fighting out of Donegal, now living in Dublin. He's just going to talk to us about his introduction into mixed martial arts and where he wants to go when he does eventually turn pro. Is set to fight on Clan Wars against a yet unnamed opponent. So I'm going to send it over to Caoilte to take that interview away.
And now we're joined by Jordan Furey ahead of his pro debut at Clan Wars 47. Jordan, how are you getting on?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Just training hard for this fight now.
Up in Donegal at the moment, in that Dublin?
Yeah, I'm in Donegal. Back where I belong.
No. Are you training back at the old gym while you're up there, or what's going on?
Normally whenever I'm back, I drop into the lads in the gym and do a bit of jiu-jitsu training, and I also go into my local boxing club where I actually started martial arts and do a bit of training there as well.
I saw you started the boxing over in, was it Letterkenny ABC before, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's where I actually started boxing.
What was the decision to get into boxing in the first place before you went to MMA?
I don't know. I always was interested in boxing. I would have watched it along with my uncle and stuff. And a friend of mine's that I used to go to school with, his dad actually made him start boxing for some reason, and basically I didn't want for him to be able to beat me up, so I started training boxing. I went along with him, and he kind of gave it up then, and I just continued.
Were you competing in boxing before you went to MMA?
Yeah, I was competing in boxing. I had a good few fights, and before I started MMA.
What was the decision like then to move to MMA? Like, what made you decide, oh, I'm finished with punching lads in the head now? Is like rather start taking them down, throwing kicks and everything on top of that.
Well, I was on the wrong end of a decision in boxing, and it went the distance. It went the 3 rounds, but I felt like I had won, and it was a bit of a shady decision. So I kind of got a bit annoyed then and stopped training. And actually, then a guy asked me to come down because he knew that I'd done boxing. He asked me to come down and spar in the local MMA gym, and they told me that I was going to be coming down and doing a bit of just a bit of boxing sparring, basically, with the lads down there. But they ended up then. I got down there, and like 10 minutes later, I had shin pads and everything on, and the boys down there beat me up. So ever since then, I wanted to learn. Like,
What was your reaction when they handed you the shin pads?
I don't know. Like, I was kind of interested in doing it, but whenever they put the shin pads on me, then I just decided, well, I'm here now, so I might as well do it.
Did you try and throw a kick?
I did poorly, but it wasn't great.
Brilliant. And how long were you there for? So when you were training training up in Donegal?
I trained there for maybe 4 or 5 years. I trained MMA in that gym and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but I started then in SBG in 2020.
What was the decision like to move down to SBG? Because you're leaving home, you're kind of packing up everything and leaving it behind you, and you're going to the big smoke up in Dublin and training with this gym full of absolute killers. What was that decision like?
So I trained in Donegal. Whenever I was training, I used to train along with Dara Kelly. We both came from the same gym, and Dara had moved then to Dublin because he had maybe like 7 fights, and he decided to move down to basically to turn pro and go after it. So whenever he had left, I was then left with nobody, and like there was nobody really in my area that would have been the same level as myself and Dara. So I had nobody to really train with. And then the lockdown happened, and so I was training. We were basically training jiu-jitsu, and a friend of mine's, we're training his shed throughout the lockdown. I hope I don't get in trouble for this now. But we were training his shed, and Dara had texted me one of the days saying that SBG had, obviously the gym was closed as well, and he wanted to take a fight. So he asked me would I train with him for the fight. And we basically started training in this little small shed. And we were training for maybe a week. And then Dara had texted me and said that SBG was reopening and that he was just going to go down and do his camp there instead. So I was a bit disappointed then that I couldn't get any MMA rounds. And Dara said to me, he was like, would you think about coming down? And at the time, I had planned to come down, but maybe a year later after I had got a few fights. But basically then he had asked John and Dave, was I able to come down? And this was on a Thursday, I think. And after that, I moved straight to Dublin on the Monday, and I've been there since.
So what was it? Only a few days, and the difference between you making a decision just to move down to Dublin on a whim.
Yeah, literally, like I came home and told my mom and my girlfriend that I was going to be moving to Dublin on Monday, and I've literally been there since.
How did that decision go down with them?
I don't know. Well, like they were very supportive. Like they wanted me to do it because, you know, since I started training, I have been training basically full time. You know, like I put a lot of work into it. So it was just a bit. I think they were a bit thinking this guy's a bit crazy because it was on like 3 days' notice. I decided to move to Dublin.
Did you feel like isolated at all, I suppose, back when you were training up in Donegal? Like I imagine when you're growing up, there's probably not a whole, like most lads are probably out playing Gaelic football or hurling or something, I'd imagine. Would that be the case?
Yeah, or just looking after sheep and cows and all.
Did you have to look after any sheep or cows? Did you? Whereabouts in Donegal are you from?
Letterkenny.
Oh, you're from Letterkenny, so
Yeah,
that'd be like the big city in Donegal, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. I'm from the big city. I actually live in a housing estate, like, so I'm not really from the countryside, like Dara.
So no sheep or cows for you.
Nah, none of that. But they're maybe a 5-minute drive away.
Good for cardio, running after the sheep and the cows. What's your current situation up in Dublin now? Are you kind of balancing work with training and everything like that, or what's your kind of accommodation situation like up there? It's difficult, like moving away from home when you're trying to balance all of that, I guess.
Yeah, it is. But I actually just rent a place with my girlfriend. She is a nurse and she moved down as well. Like, she's there about a year now also. So, I'm living along with her.
That's tough going though. Like Dublin rents, I'm renting myself, and I know the pain of it.
I know. It's a
when
nightmare.
You're not making much money, you've been an amateur up until now, obviously making your pro debut. But do you have a part-time job as well, or how does that work out?
I do a bit of work here and there, but not consistent. But I'm very lucky. I have sponsors from back home that look after me, because I'm basically, like, I'm the only person from Letterkenny, like, that actually does MMA, and a lot of people up here are very supportive of me, and they're very interested in it. So I get a lot of support from my sponsors, which I'm very grateful for.
Obviously Conor McGregor's the name that everyone will have aspire to be and looks up to in Ireland from a fighting perspective. But Joseph Duffy, a great man from Donegal, did great things in the UFC as well. Were you watching Joseph Duffy's career back when he was fighting, and was he someone that you took inspiration from?
Yeah, 100%. Whenever he would have been fighting, like, I would have been very early in MMA. I had obviously watched maybe a few of his UFC fights. I've watched them all now, but at the time, whenever he was fighting, it's just kind of a bit mad to me that a guy from Donegal was fighting in the UFC, because there's not really any big MMA gyms here in Donegal.
Looking at your own fight career and how you've kind of progressed so far, like, you put together this ridiculous streak of wins before I know you dropped your first loss to the Nationals, but to look at that loss, I remember myself and Andy were up there watching, and it seemed almost like a bit of a bittersweet moment for you, because I know it was the first loss of your amateur career, but I think there was a bit of a moment when you found out about the Super Cup potentially you being on the team for that. Can you go through, I guess, what you learned from the loss, and then going from losing to finding out you're still going off to Bahrain?
Yeah, so, like, from that I learned a lot, actually. I'm actually very grateful for that loss. At the time, I was disappointed, but I learned a lot from it. Like, even getting in there with your man Colin, like, he's very experienced at the time, and I think he made his MMA debut when I was like 13 or something. So, like, he's obviously been in the game a long time, and I had my moments in that fight as well, which which showed that I was definitely there. Like, it wasn't like he outclassed me, but it was good even to get in there with him, a guy with his sort of experience, and to go the distance with him and have a good fight.
Afterwards, then, going from that and finding out that you're potentially, after making the team, get an all expenses paid trip to go fight in the Middle East. What was that like?
Oh, it was crazy. It was actually mad. It was whenever we got out there, we were looked after so well by them, and the whole setup was just mad. Like, I don't know if you just watched it live, like the finals and stuff, but, like, they had flown the cup in a helicopter, and there was all this fire and lights and all this different stuff. It was crazy. I felt like it was good to see it, because that's what I feel like it's going to be like in the future whenever I get up to the bigger shows. So I feel like that'll stand to me, being in that situation. That'll stand to me now whenever I turn pro and get into the bigger shows.
When you're young,
Sorry, Bill. Just we ask a lot of people who've gone through the amateur scene. Obviously, there's different avenues that you can go down. Obviously, you can go and compete at the IMAFs. You can do your regional shows. Like, do you think one or the other is better, or would have helped you progress in your amateur career or get you prepared for professional? Or maybe what we're kind of hearing is a mixture of the both. You know, you're getting that IMAF experience and you're getting the regional show where it's just one fight in one night, whereas at the IMAFs you could be fighting 2 or 3 times in a week and you're maintaining your weight cut and everything like that. How did you find all of those experiences, and like what do you feel that you got the most benefit out of?
I feel like they're both definitely beneficial. Like, whenever you travel to fight, you've got the, staying in hotels, cutting weight. You have to sort all your meals out there and stuff. That's obviously going to stand to you as well. But also fighting at home in front of, if you're selling whatever 100 tickets and people are coming, they're both like they're going to stand to you, because even in the IMATs, like, you fight 3 times in 3 days or whatever, you're never going to get that at pro. So whenever you do turn pro, you've already, experienced fighting a few times in a row, which is actually mad.
With most recently, you went back down to lightweight for the first time with over in Shock and Awe. Was the move back down and the weight cut back down, was that just in preparation for pro? You're staying at lightweight for pro?
Yeah, I'm gonna stay at lightweight for pro. To be honest, that I had planned for my last fight there. That was going to be my last amateur fight. So it was good to make the weight and just see how it went. And the weight cut went very smooth. So I'm definitely gonna stick at lightweight now at pro.
Why do you make the decision now to go pro, Jordan?
Now's the time. Like, I feel like I've had all of the experiences at amateur. Like, I've went to England. I fought twice in England. I fought in Bahrain. I fought locally. I feel like I've mixed it up with some of the best guys around, and I feel like I'm definitely at professional level, and I have been for a while. But now it's just time to, speaking to John and Dave, like, now's the time. I feel like once I turn pro now, the rule set's gonna suit me a lot better as well, with the 5-minute rounds and the the knees and elbows as well.
What I'm looking forward to is seeing you in 4-ounce gloves, because the big difference, or the one thing I noticed when you're an amateur, is when you hit lads, you could hear it, and it was like someone being hit with a shovel, and that was with 7-ounce gloves. What's the excitement like to just put on a pair of 4-ounce and be able to use that power against lads?
Yeah, I'm very excited to use the 4-ounce gloves. I feel like I have really good boxing because I come from a boxing background. So whenever I'm hitting people with 4-ounce gloves, it's definitely going to be having an effect.
And why Clanmores exactly? So I know you spent a lot of time there as an amateur, but what was the decision to go there and stay regional, as opposed to, you see guys nowadays that are just jumping into the big leagues instantly? Like, you look at like Derek Kelly fighting in Bellator at the moment, going through the ranks there. What was the decision to stay regional?
Well, I just wanted, basically, I want to stay active. So I want to get a fight on Clanmores now. Like, all of the big shows are looking like they're booked up at the minute. So I just want to get the show on the road now with Clanmores. And also, Clanmores is a very good show, and it's close to home for me. So this is my first fight, and I think my last 5 fights, this is my first fight back in Ireland. So it'll be good for people at home here, because I get a lot of support up in Donegal. It'd be good to get a show where people can travel to. Like,
as it stands, at time of recording, no opponent's been announced just yet. But are you having difficulty finding one? Why do you think it's so difficult as well for someone to accept that fight?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm sure we will get someone, but I think maybe for your I don't know, maybe this is the way they're thinking. Maybe for their pro debut or first 2 or 3 fights, there might be easier fights out there. I don't know what the thinking is of some of the people, but I'm sure I'll get something sorted.
When you look at, you know, your next few fights, typically when it's on the domestic circuit, you're going to be fighting Irish guys, and I feel like you've had a solid strength of schedule already as an amateur. And when I think back to that, the IMA National Championships of last year, it was a really strong division where it was the likes of yourself and Colin Marr and Conor McCarthy. Do you like testing yourself out against kind of like the best that Ireland has to offer, or would you prefer to be fighting guys not from Ireland?
Well, to be honest, like I've fought, I think I've fought a lot of Irish guys so far, like in my amateur career. But now whenever I turn pro, like I would prefer to fight people from elsewhere. Like, you know, I think whenever you're an amateur, for us Irish guys to compete against each other, it's just to, you know, we're raising each other up as well. Like, you know, building the level off competing against each other. But you know, a pro, like I would, you know, I'm not opposed to it, but I would prefer to fight someone from somewhere else. A pro, like.
And I guess obviously you're hopefully going to be sharing the card with Dara for, I think, maybe the first, second, third time that you fought in the same card together. Given the fact that your relationship and how close you are, is how good is it, and how kind of to have someone else that you're very close to, that you're training in day out with on the same card as you, just so you can kind of, is there a level of comfort to that?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be good to have Dara on the same show again. You know, like there's going to be a lot of people from Donegal at this show. Like I think, you know, Dara will obviously have loads of tickets sold. I have loads of tickets sold. There'll be big support for us on the night, and it'll be good for Donegal MMA. You know, to get 2 guys turning pro. And there's also another guy from a Donegal gym that's fighting, Andrew McPherson. He's from Ballybofey. He's going to be fighting, so it'll be a big night for you know, guys in Donegal doing MMA.
What's it looking like next then? So we know that you're going to compete the regional scene. You want to stay active. There's plenty of promotions knocking on the door to get in Ireland at the moment. You've got the likes of PFL who are coming back at some point, or coming at some point. Bellator obviously do their 2 shows a year. Octagon are seem to be picking up talent and have that announced at Ireland versus UK series. Is there potential for any of them? Do you think any of those that you're interested in?
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, the plan is to fight on one of the bigger promotions. I'm not 100% sure yet which one I'm going to go with. You know, we'll get this first fight out of the way now, and see what offers are there, and then we'll, you know, I'll chat to John, I'll chat to Dave, and we'll figure out where we go from there.
Have any of them been on to you yet?
I've had a few offers so far, and we're just, you know, basically
Do tell.
It's going to work out better for me, I think, if I get a couple of fights beforehand, you know.
100%. Are you looking to fight for legacy? Are you looking to fight to earn money? Like, I mean, there's lots of different avenues right now coming into 2023. I don't think there's been as much options for Irish fighters on the regional scene, number one, but also on the international scene. Like you said, Bellator, PFL, Octagon, UFC. There's loads and loads of different avenues now that you can find, and all of those avenues can kind of lead you down a different direction. Like when it's all said and done, for you, Jordan, what are you doing it for, really? What are you making all the sacrifices for?
Well, I definitely want to make a lot of money doing it. Like, you know, I'm not sacrificing all this time. I'm doing now boxing and MMA like 10 years now. So, you know, I definitely want to get some money out of it, but also I just want to, you know, I really enjoy training. I really enjoy competing. So I want to, whenever it's all said and done, I want to you know, I want to be remembered definitely as one of the best Irish fighters, and that I want to be remembered as a very entertaining fighter as well.
Well, Jordan, you've certainly entertained us up until this point with some of the fights, the finishes, everything. Heading into pro ranks, I can probably speak for all three of us here in saying how excited we are to see you and kind of what's next for you as well. So, but thank you so much for taking the time out and joining us today. And yeah, we're looking forward to seeing you at Clan Wars.
100%.
Hopefully get a match up soon.
Boys.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Jordan.
Cheers.
All right, lads, let's get back into it here. A couple of newsworthy items, and top of the agenda here, obviously, Will Fleury, coming off of his win over Christoph Jocko at the PFL regular season, has been flagged by the Nevada State Athletic Commission, and has had a positive banned substance test. It has come out based off of the hearing from the Nevada State Athletic Commission. He has tested positive for John Standalone. I don't really know how to kind of say that, but the kind of matter has been postponed now to a later date. He has, as of yet, not been suspended. He has not been fined. So that process is still pending. Andy, you reached out to Nevada State Athletic Commission
I did.
For a statement. What did they say?
So I reached out. So they said the commission voted at the 17th of May 2023 commission meeting to extend Mr. William Fleury's suspension through the resolution of the matter. The Deputy Attorney General assigned to our agency will follow up with Mr. Fleury and or his representative to negotiate a proposed adjudication agreement, which must be approved by the commission at a future meeting, or in the alternative, the matter will go to a future commission meeting for a disciplinary hearing. Now, my understanding is that what that essentially means, so when they're saying there's they'll follow up with Mr. Fleury and or his representative to negotiate a proposed adjudication agreement, which has to be approved. They're kind of negotiating, right? What's your suspension here? It's like Will is currently temporarily suspended. He has tested positive. Like he's committed the crime for however way you want to say it. And now it's a case of what's the punishment. So we don't know what that is yet. That will either be, I guess, agreed to behind closed doors. I don't know whether, I'm not entirely sure how these things work, whether it's like, it's a cooperation thing or whatever that will, give you a more lenient ban, or I don't really know. But we'll find out in due course, I guess, whenever the next meeting takes place. I would assume that'll be when the news will come out. That's the way it kind of trickled out this time. So
yeah, I mean,
it's not a good situation, but
no, not definitely not for Will. Like, I mean, we could be waiting for B samples. There could be many things that we'll try not to speculate too much.
Yeah.
What we know is that there has been a positive test, and the matter has been postponed to a later date. So we'll kind of maybe cover that again. But let's talk about it. Like, I mean, yeah, it's not a good look for Will, not a good look for Irish mixed martial arts, and it's just unfortunate. Will was one of 9 people that have tested positive on that card. The tests were done.
Isn't it?
So, like, I mean, we don't know the circumstances surrounding anything here for any of the fighters, including Will. But that's something that Will is going to have to live with for the rest of his career. That label will be attached to his name, and it's just disappointing. For Will, I guess. For us, we were looking forward to seeing the progression of Will in the PFL. That his status with PFL is still yet unknown as well. What's your thoughts on the whole incident, Andy?
Yeah, like it's not good. It's the first time that I've been speaking with a bunch of people trying to figure out. Like, I don't know if there's any other Irish fighter in MMA who has at least publicly tested positive, at least in any of the big organizations for PEDs. So it's kind of new territory for everyone in Irish MMA, where look, it's at the end of the day, you can't do it. Now I don't have like a simple cut and dry answer here, to be honest with you. Like, when I know for a fact that lots of people are on steroids. Now, that doesn't mean that it's right, but this is not a clean sport. There's a ton of people. There's 9 alone caught on this card. There's plenty that are on PEDs. And in a perfect world, I would love a sport where, you know, it's clean.
Allegedly on PEDs. We can't say for sure.
Allegedly. I mean, allegedly, yeah. I mean, I'm not naming names, but like, there's a lot of fighters worldwide on PEDs, allegedly. But I'd be very confident in saying that.
Allegedly, yeah.
Allegedly. It's not a clean sport. It would be great if it was, but that's also not really an excuse for the fighters who are, you know, playing by the rules, that are going in there and putting their health on the line. It's a very complex topic. Even looking at it from Will's perspective, like, it's a bad situation when you're going in and you're fighting for $1 million life-changing money, and now, you know, you've tested positive, you don't know what your suspension is, and you don't know what your career future looks like. And look, at the end of the day, that's on Will. But yeah, it's like, you know, that's a huge opportunity, just kind of, we don't know yet, but potentially gone. And I would speculate probably is gone, and not just for him, but for all the other fighters who have tested positive. Yeah, it's messy. It's not good for Irish MMA. It's not a good look when I'm sure you'll have people who are detractors of MMA in Ireland that'll try and use this for their own means and purposes to denigrate the sport, and I hope that doesn't happen. But yeah, it's not a good look. I don't really know what else to say. We'll have to see how it goes, and obviously cover it more. But
yeah, we'll see. Like, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of unknowns right now, and we'll see what eventually does come out and happen. Caoilte, I'll bring you in. Your choice. Any thoughts on the situation as a whole?
I think Andy summed it up very well. It's disappointing, really. You know, you get really excited for an athlete to go into the potential to win $1 million, and something like this, and this happens. So, but I guess that's when you make the decision to, well, for anyone who makes a decision to take PEDs, it's that you know the risks attached to it, and yeah, it kind of brings a bit of a stain on Irish MMA when this happens, and yeah, but not really much else to say, to be honest. Hopefully it's hopefully we get to see you at some point.
I doubt it's the last time we'll be talking about it anyway. It's MMA is it's you know, combat sports. At the end of the day, you're going in and you're putting I don't say your life on the line, but like you
are putting your life on the line.
You are putting your life on the line. Like, and we've seen it happen in Ireland even. So you're putting your life on the line, and that's why this conversation is amplified, especially more in combat sports, because it's not the same as when you're going in and, you know, hitting a tennis ball. And
it's mad though, isn't it? Because like, when you ask this question about, and obviously it's because it's related to an Irish fighter, the reaction we would have is very different to if we were speaking about just any general fighter around. Otherwise, you just go like, oh yeah, just popped, and so be it. And now it's
I think it's because maybe it's the first. You know, like Andy, it's all new to us. It's the first instance here. Like, I mean, yeah, but like, I don't have any strong feelings. Obviously, it's just unfortunate. You'd have preferred not to happen, and unfortunately for Will, that's something that he's going to have to live with for the rest of his career and stuff like that. But you know, hopefully. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No. Fire ahead, Andy. Fire ahead, man.
No, I was just gonna say, like, we've obviously had Will on here. We've talked to him.
Will's a great supporter of the podcast too,
and he's also like in my experience, Will's a really nice guy. So it's a weird, like, you're not trying to like by no means be like, oh sure, like it's grand just because they're Irish. Like it's not grand. But it's just it's unfortunate.
Very, very, very unfortunate. We'll move on. Obviously, we'll talk about that as more news kind of breaks. It was, you know, our duty to kind of talk about it and acknowledge it and just share our thoughts on it, as we do with all things. We cover the good. We cover some of the things that are unfortunate that happens in Irish mixed martial arts as well. That's what we're here for. You know, I want to give a good shout out. Moving on, Brian Moore is fighting Otto Rodrigues in Bellator Dublin at 145 pounds. Caoilte, how do you feel about the move for Brian up to 145 pounds against another tough guy? This Otto Rodrigues guy is he's no joke. You know, with Brian, he is the ultimate company guy for Bellator here, man. He never turns a fight down. We have to give him all the credit in the world. He's moving up to 145. I like that, anytime he doesn't have to cut weight, I like that. But he's getting another chance to fight at in Bellator Dublin in September. I guess the big story here is the move up to 145. How do you see it?
I was surprised, actually, when I saw it. I thought he was going on a nice little run there at 135, and I thought that had legs. I thought he could have started pushing into the rankings with maybe a win or two more. So, yeah, no, Kim was a bit of a surprise. Very hard, very difficult opponent. But I can't remember when it was. He was back when he was fighting. Yeah, back when he was fighting Daniel Weichel at 145. He looked, back in those days, Daniel Weichel, he felt after him. He won at 45. So he's used to it. He's got experience up there. It's not as if he's going in undersized at all, not by any means. So, look, just happy to see him get a fight and back in front of the Irish crowd, really.
100%. Andy, your thoughts on the fight itself and the move back up to 145? I don't hate the move back up to 145, to be honest. I'd be interested to see how Brian looks there. Like, he's coming in there, he's not going to have to cut the extra weight. He's been putting on tremendous performances at 135, win or lose, to be honest, So I would expect him to come in here with bags of energy and feed off the Irish crowd, and you're always going to get a good showing from Brian Moore anyway, and it's great that he's being added onto this card too.
Yeah, I mean, Brian at 145 gave AJ McKee one of the toughest tests of his career. I personally don't love the move to 145. More so from like a narrative, like kind of what Caoilte was talking about earlier on. I thought that his callouts of Leandro Higo were persistent, and I was hoping that at a certain point they would be kind of undeniable, where he would eventually get that fight. I felt like there was, as Chris said, legs to that there, and my concern is, I see he's gone in and fighting this guy Otto Rodrigues, and I look him up, and he's just the exact type of he's like every Brian Moore opponent, where he's like a guy who's got a decent record, he's a solid fighter. Nobody really knows him, or he's not that. Yeah, I don't really know him. And my concern or my worry would be we just see for the next 3-4 fights the exact same, run of Brian Moore winning fights, calling for an opponent, and then just not getting it. And I feel like if he'd maybe stayed at 135 and just continued on that like relentless pursuit of Leandro Higo, at some point they have to crack and give him what he deserves. So that'd be my only concern. But look, there's probably other reasons as to why he's doing this as well. So I'd be interested to hear from Brian on it.
100%. Another couple of quick fight announcements. Mickey Behea is taking on Mario Giorgi, and Alexander Yankov is taking on Claudio Pastella. Both of those are pro fights on Iúr Fighting Championships on June 25th. We'll break that. We'll break down that card probably on the next podcast. Your thoughts real quick on those fights, Caoilte? Couple of good pro fights there at the top of the card. I know Decky always puts on a good card there for Iúr. This one goes down on June 25th, but yeah, nice little additions there. And it's great to see a couple of other professional fights happening on these kind of cards as well. Yeah,
it's good to see like pro fights and regional shows. It's exciting. It just adds a bit more to the cards and gets you. I just find it gets me a bit more excited to see them, and especially now you've got lads, early pros, making the move, trying to build their careers and start them off on the right foot. Really excited to see Alexander Yankov versus Claudio Pastella. That would be fantastic. I think Yankov has been sublime in recent times, to be honest. Just striking so crisp. It's really enjoyable to watch. So yeah, I'm excited to see watch him fight and how that fight plays out. He's probably one of the most underrated fighters in the scene at the minute, to be honest with you, flying under the radar quite a lot. So hopefully he can get a big moment soon. Mick Behea is making his pro debut, I believe. And yeah, great grappler, fantastic grappler. So excited to see what he's got in store for us in the pro ranks. He's mixed results as an amateur, but feels it's the right time, and it's great. We need more flyweights around as well. So I think that we've a lot of Irish flyweights hanging around now, don't we? There's the two lads there, got Ger Harris, Kieran Mulholland, one of the Burns as well, I'm pretty sure. It's great.
Burns, yeah.
Yeah, so
yeah. There we
Good
go.
time for
It's
comments.
I'm looking forward to seeing how that fight card takes shape. Last but not least, shout out to our own Graham MacDonald, who played a big part in the new Conor McGregor documentary, McGregor Forever, which aired and made its kind of premiere on Netflix last week. Really good. I know you guys have watched it. I powered through it before this podcast and watched it, just finished it this morning, and I really enjoyed it, to be honest. But shout out to Graham, for credit to him and the rest of the crew for getting that together. Giving us an insight of Conor McGregor's career from start to finish. Even before the documentary came out, I went back and I watched a couple of the old episodes of the TV show, the one that was on RTE. And seeing him back from the very start, obviously, to see him where he is right now, it's been a crazy journey, Andy, hasn't it?
It's mad. Like, it's I was watching the other day and I was just thinking, and look, I've seen a lot of people giving out online about how they haven't addressed some of the more negatives. This was never going to be, this was always going to, it was never going to be that. But I think it's amazing the amount of footage, like the guys with Graham and the rest of the lads, Gav, and who were following him since day one, like to have an entire career catalog essentially of behind the scenes footage is mad. Like, could you imagine that with Michael Jordan or like Muhammad Ali or like one of the, because like at the end of the day, McGregor is like the most captivating MMA fighter of all time. He is the biggest star in the history of the sport, and likely ever. So to have that depth of footage to be able to create these these documentaries is amazing, in my opinion. And it is like, it stokes the look. There's definitely there's a positive spin in it all, but like I liked that featherweight run. It filled me with so much joy and excitement and passion for MMA and Irish MMA specifically, that like it's kind of nice to look at the fun side of McGregor, because there's many sides to him that are not fun to watch from afar and to cover, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching it, and it was a good crack.
Yeah, I think like experiencing the run up, like I was watching it, and I was just thinking, like, being at the weigh-ins, a couple of these weigh-ins, and like in particular down there for the second Diaz fight, like the amount of people that were showing up, like his ability to turn just a simple weigh-in into a show, like it was like people wanted to go and see. Like, I had, like, when I was down there, I don't know what year it was, 2016 for that fight, and you're at the weigh-ins and the Irish crowd were going nuts and they're selling booze for cheap there and they're getting us all riled up. They put on Bisping and Henderson press conference before the Conor McGregor fight, and poor Michael Bisping didn't get a word in edgeways, because the minute he came out onto the microphone, all the Irish fans were booing him. And then of course he reacted, which kicked the Irish fans off more. And then like it was a show for the entire week, and all the eyes on him. It was crazy to see. Like, we'll maybe issue a spoiler alert and maybe talk a little bit about the documentary. Is there one moment that stands out to either one of you? Maybe I'll go to you first, Caoilte, about the documentary. One thing that nearly got me going, lads, was the aftermath of the Khabib fight, and how shook he was after the Khabib fight and disappointed he was. And then when Conor Jr. came over and just for that embrace there, I was like, who's cutting onions here? Like, you could, like, to capture those moments is really special when you're making a documentary. And I felt I was in the room at that stage. You could feel the disappointment, because that was a big moment in Conor McGregor's career. And look, he just knew that he didn't do enough, and he lived with maybe some of the regrets of the preparation for that fight, which they kind of alluded to in the documentary as well. But that's one moment. Obviously, there's plenty of good moments too, and I enjoyed seeing him enjoying being a father and parenthood as well. It's really wholesome as well. Caoilte, anything that sticks out to you in the documentary that you enjoyed?
The whole Khabib situation, to kind of watch that back was wild to see the different perspective of it all, because at the time it was just chaos looking from the outside. It wasn't nice to look at, and watching it back, that stood out. But for me, actually, a really nice moment that I really enjoyed is when he was doing his community service in the Presbyterian Church. I thought that was lovely. and he's picking out quotes and stuff he's finding, and he seems to be really enjoying himself, and he kind of seems empowered by it all and the whole experience of it. And I don't mean this seriously, but I'm glad to see he's actually doing the community service, because you never know when you get these sentences, you actually know if people do it or they just pay.
I don't know about that church though. It wasn't that church wasn't that dirty though, to be fair, either at the same time. But I enjoyed that.
It's like the Irish man giving a clean before the cleaner comes over or something.
yeah. And but like he mentioned something during that phase in the documentary that really stood out to me. It was that he enjoyed it so much because he said, I'm in a crazy world, and it was nice to just get isolated from that for a couple of days. And because, we look at the ups and we look at the downs of Conor McGregor, but what we don't see is how crazy his life is and how crazy his life has become, based off his hard work and everything like that. But, the money and the fame is the positive things, but your lack of privacy, not getting a second, and the fact that you can't live your life as a normal human being anymore, that's going to bear down on anybody, really, and that I always try to think of it that way when I think of Conor McGregor and what must it be like to have that level of fame. Andy, before we wrap it up here, any thoughts yourself on the documentary or anything that stood out?
Yeah, I mean, like yourself, the aftermath of the Khabib one, where they're in the change room and Dana White's coming over to him, and I think one of the most endearing things about Conor McGregor, especially when he was on his ascent, was how he dealt with moments of failure, and for such a braggadocious and in-your-face character, there were moments of humility where he would say, "You know what, I lost." Like, I thought the way he handled the Diaz loss was very impressive. And the same way, when Dana's kind of coming to be like, wow, that was crazy, I didn't expect that to happen in the cage, and he's like, I don't give a fuck, like, that's just handbags. He's like, I lost where it mattered most, where it actually mattered was in the cage going in, and I lost and I came up short. And like, there was no, anytime you see Conor and Khabib, or like the topic of Khabib or Conor, it brings out the worst in them, and that's all you see usually. But to see a behind the scenes clip where like he's kind of like, no, I was beaten fair and square here, and I've no one to blame but myself. And then also was when they were watching, the other part was when they were watching Khabib and Justin Gaethje, and Conor's like trying to coach Gaethje from in front of the screen, and then Khabib gets the back and gets the mount and finishes it quick. And there's just a moment there where I don't know what's going through his brain, but it's just that it was like time stood still for a second, and there was nobody else in the world and Conor just kind of processing whatever that was, whatever those emotions were. And I don't know, it was kind of powerful to me. I don't know what quite I was watching, but it was something intimate, I guess. So yeah, those were kind of the moments.
And it's like, even after the fact, when Khabib announced his retirement, I'm sure Conor was getting himself into a mentality where he was going to try and prepare and challenge himself against Khabib again. And, seeing Khabib hang it up, you're going to lose that. And that you might never get the chance to get that loss back ever again, which I know will get to a lot of fighters. You always want to kind of get over some of the losses, and that's something that Conor always tried to do as well. But really, really great documentary. Very good insight into a lot of things. We're probably after spoiling half of it already, but if you haven't seen it, definitely go check it out on Netflix. But we did give that spoiler alert, so you can't be too harsh on us. But that's it,
congrats
guys.
Again to Graham. Like, congrats again.
Yeah,
he's Graham, been working for a decade plus at this stuff. So
unbelievable stuff from Graham. Yeah, unreal from the very, very, very start to the very end. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to capture the moments in all the latest Irish mixed martial artists that are coming up. We're trying to put the spotlight on them the best that we can. Look at, when Graham started getting on there and recording Conor, Irish mixed martial arts, nobody was talking about it. It was called extreme cage fighting back then. We didn't even express it as a sport. It wasn't acknowledged as anything else. Graham or Conor and allowing Graham and the rest of the lads to kind of follow that journey has helped the progress of mixed martial arts in the country. And now we're at a stage where it's never been better, and we're delighted to be right in the mix of it. And we're 32 episodes in. Here's the 3,200 more of the Auld Triangle. Like I said,
an episode for every county.
An episode for every county. Now you said it. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Right, that was
It took
good.
me a
That was
second
good.
to leave the penny drop there, but I love
It's
that.
like, yeah, you got it. Was like, fucking, that was a good one. But yeah, we will be back for episode 33. We'll break down all the latest and greatest and have a couple of interviews coming your way in another couple of weeks. Thank you all for listening, sharing your love and support. Like I said, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and tell a friend. Help us grow, help us build Irish mixed martial arts and tell these great fighters' stories. That's it from me. That's it from Andy Stevenson. Caoilte, see us out.
Gur míle maith agaibh agus slán go fóill.